The Droodles, 10 Commandments Storybook by Ray and Sally Sioni. Good day. I, Stephen Bruce Anderson, will be your narrator today. The Droodles, 10 Commandments Storybook by Ray and Sally Sioni. On this page we have some other Droodle books that may be of interest to you by Chariot Books and the David C. Cook Publishing Company. Here's the table of contents. From the Bible, the book of Exodus, chapter 20, verses 3 to 17. These are the 10 Commandments. You may want to pause and look them over now, or continue with the book. Commandment number 1. Lenny Lumpkin tunes out. If you're at all like me, you've watched television for as long as you can remember, maybe even longer. Lenny Lumpkin was like that. Every day from sunup to sundown, Lenny lived, loved, and breathed TV. On the morning of our story, Lenny's alarm went off, as always, promptly at 6:30 a.m. With a yawn, Lenny dragged his worn-out blanket down the stairs, flipped the TV set on, then continued into the kitchen. He returned to his seat on the couch with a box of cocoa frosted nuts on his lap. By that time, the Arnold Aardvark cartoon show would have been on, but instead, the TV set was acting weird. It made strange noises. Blip, bleep, bleep, bleep. Picture looked like a painting he had seen at the Modern Art Museum. Lenny fiddled with the TV knobs and slapped the side of the set, but he only managed to turn the picture from crossing guard orange to lightning bug green. He pressed his nose against the glass screen. "Mom, I don't feel so good," he moaned. After one look at Lenny, his mother cried, "My poor baby." Then she grabbed her overcoat and yanked him. In the emergency room, Lenny deteriorated quickly. He babbled, blurted out blipping and bleeping noises. His skin turned all shades of orange and green. His eyes glowed like twin fog lights. Dr. Sure Shot stepped in. "What seems to be the problem here?" he asked, poking Lenny with several strange electronic instruments. After a while, Lenny felt like poking back. "Mrs. Lumpkin," the doctor said, removing his glasses, "I'm afraid he's hooked." "You mean?" she gulped. "Yes," Dr. Sure Shot sighed. "Videotosis. Lenny's mind is on the fritz." Soon the room swarmed with masked and gloved assistants. They tested temperature, blood pressure, and pulse. Needles and tubes punctured Lenny in a dozen places. Nothing seemed to help. "It's worse than we thought," said Dr. Sure Shot. "We must operate immediately." Under the skilled hands of Dr. Sure Shot, the difficult operation went smoothly. Within hours, Lenny was off the critical list, and a few days later he was sent home to recuperate. Soon he was back in Dr. Sure Shot's office to have his bandages removed. "Lenny's been such a good boy," Dr. Sure Shot exclaimed Mrs. Lumpkin. "He hasn't watched TV once since the accident." "You know, we caught it just in time," the doctor replied, unfastening the bandage. "In extreme cases like this, a mind can tune out permanently." Dr. Sure Shot smiled proudly as the last of the bandages peeled off, revealing an antenna embedded in Lenny's skull. "Young man, you don't know how fortunate you are," the doctor explained. "From now on, you need to explore the real world, look at the wonders of nature, and above all, make good friends. Put first things first." Lenny followed his doctor's advice, and amazingly, the less he watched TV, the less he missed it. In fact, one morning, he woke up to find his antenna crumbled on the floor. He had tuned into better things. And best of all, there were no commercials. The first commandment: "You shall have no other gods before me." Out of focus. "Now, children," said Mom, "I know all about what happened last week. I realized Freddie was just using his slingshot to show how to kill a giant and didn't mean to hit the window. And I know that when Bernard brought in the lawn sprinkler, he was just trying to add realism to Noah's Ark's kit. But please, let's try to pay attention in Sunday school today. Okay, kids?" "Oh, of course we will. We always do. Yes, what we learn here is very important." And here we are in Sunday school with the Sunday school teacher trying her best. Well, tell me, kids, Mom asked, how was Sunday school today? Super, great, far out, totally awesome. Really? Mom continued. What was the lesson about? Well, that's a good question. You tell her, Lucy. She's your mother. I think this guy ate a rotten apple. No, no, they put him in a lion's den. Yeah. Then he went up to the mountain with a headache and got some tablets. And then they made this golden moo cow and worshipped it. I see, Mother replied skeptically. Say, did you ever notice all the golden moo cows that block out what you ought to do at church? Who, me? What's she talking about? I don't know, but I think we're in trouble. The second commandment. You shall not make for yourself an idol, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God. Marcia Brain Drains. Name Game. Marcia Brain Drain was the only child of Charles Foster Brain Drain, the founder and president of the multinational corporation called Systematic Brain Drain. I'm sure you've heard of it. One day when Marcia's mother was sick in bed with the flu, Mr. Brain Drain agreed to bring Marcia to work with him. Soon their car pulled into Mr. Brain Drain's reserved parking place beneath the brain. Now, Marcia, he said, I have meetings all morning, so just come to my office promptly at noon, and in the meantime, behave yourself. Remember, you're the president's daughter. Marcia looked into his eyes. Don't worry, Father. I won't let anyone forget it. Mr. Brain Drain got out of the car and hurried off toward the elevator. Marcia, who had 3 hours to get to the 42nd floor, decided to take the stairs. Inching open a heavy door, she found herself in a huge lobby. Hundreds of people crisscrossed the room in a hurry. Marcia nudged her way into a crowd gathered at the snack counter. The clerk didn't even see her until a little hand reached up and grabbed a pack of sugarless gum from the cardboard display. Hey, you, snapped the woman from behind the counter. Where do you think you're going with that gum? Marcia was calm. My daddy, Charles Foster Brain Drain, said I could pick out anything I wanted, she answered. Your father is Mr. Brain Drain? The clerk gasped, holding the gum back. Here, take it. It's on the house. Oh, thank you, replied Marcia, and I'll take a red licorice. Candy in hand, she headed for the elevator. No sooner had the elevator doors slid shut than Marcia pushed every button from 2 to 42. On the 16th floor, she decided she needed a change of pace. Enough of this. Marcia looked at the row of buttons on the elevator wall and pushed the red one that said emergency. Clang! The alarm rang out. Marcia scurried down the hall and found herself in a large room with 80 secretaries, all typing furiously. She walked past several desks unnoticed, then spotted the lady who had been so nice to her. Hello, Charlotte, said Marcia smoothly. I need you to type a letter for me. My daddy, Charles Foster Brain Drain, said so. I'm sure he did, said Charlotte, doubting every word. Would you like to ask him yourself? Marcia challenged. No. Charlotte inserted a fresh white sheet into her typewriter. Leaving Charlotte with a headache, Marcia took the letter and zipped down the hall, up 2 flights of stairs and into a room marked Photocopy Center. The room was empty except for one very large, expensive-looking copying machine. Standing on a chair, Marcia placed her letter on the glass plate and pressed the bright green copy button. Bingo, a perfect copy, thought Marcia, but you never know if one is enough. She set the dial to 500, then skipped out the door. On the 30th floor, Marcia tested the fire extinguishers. They worked. On 31, she pulled the fire alarm and then timed how long it rang before the fire department arrived to shut it off. 4 minutes. On 32, she checked to see if the intercom was in good working order. It was, so she gave everyone in the building the afternoon off on behalf of her father, Charles Foster Brain Drain. She had worked up quite an appetite by noon. Time for lunch, she thought, as she got up, back into the elevator and punched the top button. In seconds, the elevator door opened, revealing a woman seated behind a large desk. Hello, Mrs. Stubbs, said Marcia sweetly.
"Miss Braindrain," said the secretary, "your father heard about your antics this morning. He says that you have some apologizing to do." "No way!" Marcia roared. "Who does he think he is? He expects everybody to jump at the drop of his name. Mr. Braindrain wants this. Mr. Braindrain wants that. Blah, blah, blah." "Marcia!" She heard a familiar, but at the moment not very friendly voice calling from the office behind Mrs. Stubbs. "Marcia Foster Braindrain, step into my office right now and close the door behind you." Marcia gulped. Her name game was over, and she'd lost. The third commandment: "You shall not misuse the name of the Lord your God, for the Lord will not hold anyone guiltless who misuses his name." Circuit breakers. The NG 9000 had to give up its day off. The owners remarked, "This will bring us more payoff." Look at that big machine. Kablam! But machines aren't made just to work, work, work. Without time to recharge, this one went berserk. The fourth commandment: "Remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God."
Hi, boys and girls. I hope you're enjoying my message so far. I want you to pay special attention to this next one.
Mother knows best. One day not long ago, Bernard Lagardo found a frightened, long-eared creature shivering under his back porch. "Poor little fellow," said Bernard, gently reaching his hand under the first step. "You're cold and hungry, no doubt, and whew, you need a bath." The two went inside. After a little food and lots of suds, Bernard lifted his new friend to eye level. "You need a home," said Bernard, "and I've got one for you. You also need a name." Bernard thought for a few of his favorite things. "I'll call you." Bernard provided a great home for Snackers. Every day after school, Snackers ran up the street to meet Bernard, and Bernard took Snackers with him almost everywhere, to the park, to the store, even to the movie once. Bernard spent most of his spare time in the afternoons teaching Snackers all that he could, and Snackers quickly acquired Bernard's sweet tooth. The day school let out for summer vacation was doubly special for Bernard. Not only did he never have to face Miss Olden Crinkler again, but Snackers met him right at the schoolyard gate. He'd gotten there all by himself. "Snackers," laughed Bernard, feeding him a chocolate chewy bite. "You're amazing." Snackers licked Bernard's face, which Bernard liked. As the summer passed, Snackers grew bigger and bigger, smarter and smarter. Sometimes while Bernard ate dinner, Snackers stayed out and went places on his own. He knew his way around so well that often he didn't come home until dark. Bernard always had a warm bath, a nice supper, and a sweet treat ready for Snackers when Snackers came home. But he was worried about his long-eared friend. One night, late in the summer, Bernard sat on the back porch reading a comic book with a flashlight, waiting for Snackers. He stayed far into the night, but still no Snackers. Soon it was morning. Bernard's mother found him asleep on the back steps. "Bernard," she cried. The screen door slammed behind her, and Bernard woke quickly. He glanced around the yard, hoping to see his little friend, but no Snackers. Bernard put his head in his hands. "My poor baby," said Mrs. Lagardo. "Tell me what's wrong." "I raised him and I fed him and I taught him," Bernard sniffled. "Now he's gone away and he didn't even say goodbye. He didn't appreciate all I did for him." "Sometimes that happens," said Mrs. Lagardo, sitting next to him. Suddenly something important occurred to Bernard. "Mom," he said, "I really appreciate what you do for me." Mrs. Lagardo hugged Bernard and kissed him on the nose. "You'll always be my little apple dumpling," she beamed. "Oh, Mom," sighed Bernard, glad mostly that nobody was watching. The fifth commandment: "Honor your father and your mother, so that you may live long in the land the Lord your God is giving you." Jenny Jingles strikes out. After-school baseball is a favorite activity just about everywhere, and Droodleville is no exception. What better way can you think of to stretch fidgety, cramped muscles after a long day with Miss Oldencrinkle? Our friend Jenny Jingles wasn't much of a batter, but from her position in left field, she controlled the game. As the pitcher hurled the ball toward the home plate, Jenny would let out one of the most powerful yells this side of King Kong. Her well-timed shriek usually left the batter too stunned to swing straight. One day, Jenny's team was on its way to another victory. That is, it was until Sugarlips Murphy stepped into the batter's box with a sneer on his face and a bag of gumdrops in his back pocket. Ready Freddie Finstrom wound up the pitch, winked at Jenny, and flung his famed fireball. Jenny let go with her loudest cry ever, "Yeah!" But with scarcely a twitch, Sugarlips belted the ball into the bleachers. "Thanks for the home run, Jenny," laughed Sugarlips, with a raspberry gumdrop stuffed in each ear. He hadn't heard her yell at all. Sugarlips was paraded by his happy team down to Fudge Lug's sweet shop, but Jenny's team felt like dragging her out to the city dump. They were. "I can't believe you let him do that, Jenny." "Yeah, Jingles. Thanks a lot. Whose team are you on, anyway? Next time, why don't you wear one of their uniforms?" After several rounds of insults, Jenny let them have it right back. "All right already," she screamed. "You can take your good-for-nothing team and jump off Mount Rumblebug." You probably heard the phrase, "if looks could kill." Well, that pretty much described Jenny's thoughts as she drifted off to sleep. That night she had a dream she would never. Jenny dreamed. Jenny stared angrily out her bedroom window. She lifted the curtain. There's that tubbo, Bernard Legardo, riding his bicycle. Remembering the game, her eyes burned with anger. Suddenly a blinding light arced across the front yard. When Jenny looked up again, Bernard was gone. His bike lay on the ground. Where'd he go, she wondered. Moments later, another figure strolled by. Sugarlips Murphy, she fumed. That creep. Then, as before, a flash of light streaked through the air toward Sugarlips. When Jenny's eyes recovered from the bright light, Sugarlips wasn't there. First Bernard, now Sugarlips. Fear filled Jenny for a moment. Just by looking at them? Then she smiled. "Oh boy," she said, and dashed out the front door. Every time she met somebody she didn't like, Zappo, they were gone forever. The lady that threw newspapers at Jenny whenever Jenny took the shortcut across her lawn, Zappo. The man with the mustache who never answered his doorbell on Halloween, Zappo. And what about that no-good team of mine, thought Jenny. In her dream, she raced over to the ball field, where everyone sat before school trading baseball cards. "It's been nice knowing you," she scowled. Freddie, Lucy, Natalie, and all the rest disappeared instantly, like turning off a TV set. This is a cinch, Jenny thought. I put all those undesirables in their place. Those goody-goody girls, Natalie and Lucy, that wisecrack whiz, Freddie, the pork belly, Bernard and Sugarlips. Oh, ooh, she shivered. He's the very worst. Then she looked back at the empty bleachers. That Lucy sure loved animals, and Natalie is actually quite kind. And Freddie is always there when you need him. And then there's lovable old Bernard. Suddenly Jenny didn't feel so good. "Just who do I think I am?" she cried. And she woke herself up. It was morning, and the sun was streaming in on her face. She sat up with eyes open wide. "What have I done?" She jumped to the window, and there was Bernard Legardo riding his bike, just like before. He looked as alive as ever. "Bernard," she cried, "stay right there." Was it all a dream? Jenny wondered. Darting through the living room, she flung open the front door and stared in disbelief. "We're sorry," boomed the voices of her teammates and other friends, gathered huddled on Jenny's doorstep. Sugarlips Murphy was at the very front. "Jenny," he said, "what good is life if people can't be friends?" "It's no good at all," Jenny agreed, beaming as her gang lifted her up in the air and carried her off to school. Lagging behind, Freddie Finstrom nudged Bernard Legardo. "And not only that," he said, "but I think we're all a lot safer with Jenny on our side." The sixth commandment: you shall not murder. Family fitness. When mom and dads are true to each other, life is delightful for sister and brother. But when fathers and mothers If others start flirting, in no time at all, the whole family's hurting. The seventh commandment, you shall not commit adultery. How Ready Freddy stole the show. Science fairs, yuck, grumbled Ready Freddy Finstrom, kicking the front step of IQ Quigley's mansion. Every year it's the same old drag. If it isn't reducing air pollution using moldy bread, it's generating electricity by burning potato peels. Now, how is a busy person like me supposed to think up this stuff on his own? Ready Freddy was definitely not ready for tomorrow night's science fair. He hadn't even picked a topic. I wish I could invent a robot to go instead of me, he thought, ringing IQ Quigley's doorbell. Oh well, IQ is always up to something. I'm sure he'll inspire me. Frederick Finstrom, IQ said, smiling. What brings you to my humble abode this evening? Returning the book you borrowed a year ago? Not exactly, answered Freddy. I just thought you might like some company tonight. The two friends walked down the narrow staircase to IQ's laboratory. Freddy stared at the jumbled collection of gizmos and contraptions before him, searching for an idea to take home. What's this, IQ? He asked, picking up a little black box. A new video game. Careful, my boy. This is not for children. IQ warned, grabbing the black box. I call it Track-O-Matic. It's a burglar alarm system that detects a thief and tracks him down by remote control. I see, Freddy said, eagerly anxious to hear more. No, you don't see, IQ explained. You can't see it. Everything in the house is protected by Track-O-Matic. It is marked with an invisible electronic charge. Any stolen object gives off a signal that can be traced anywhere. You know, IQ, Freddy began, you really ought to test your new invention. And the best place would be a spot likely to attract thieves. Quite right, IQ agreed. Well, Freddy continued, my mother's on the prowl for a kitchen pirate who has been plundering desserts from our refrigerator. This would be highly irregular, IQ protested. So you're afraid it won't work, eh? Freddy sneered. Of course it works, IQ shouted. Then it's all set, said Freddy, snatching the box. I'll let you know what happens next week. As Freddy dashed through IQ's front gate with his instant science project in hand, he bumped into a classmate. Why, hello, Bernard, he said nervously. What brings you to this part of town tonight? I thought maybe IQ needed someone to talk to, stuttered Bernard. Say, how is your science fair project coming? But Freddy was already halfway home. Like Freddy, Bernard snooped around IQ's lab, asking many questions. He showed a special interest in the miniature flying device. No sooner had IQ explained how it worked than Bernard remembered a scout meeting he was late for. The flying machine vanished with him. IQ Quigley had never seen so many guests in one evening. Each visitor seemed interested in a different experiment or invention, and many asked to borrow the one they liked most. The science fair opened the next evening to a packed crowd. Bernard Legardo stood by a poster that read, Personal Flying Machines. Lizzie Springbee's project was called Quirks of Quarks. Benny Benswith sat proudly by, Is there a black hole in your future? The judges asked Ready Freddy Finstrom to begin the evening by demonstrating his original project, the ultimate anti-theft device. Freddy moved the switch on the black box to track. Suddenly, a deafening screech howled from the far corner of the room, then from the other side, and then again from the front. Dozens of science fair projects sounded an ear-piercing alarm. Everyone froze, helplessly, holding hands over their ears. Moments later, and none too soon, a small yellow hand reached around Freddy and inserted a tiny key and turned off the black box. IQ Quigley glared angrily at all his visitors from the night before. Nobody knew what to say until, with a grin, Freddy broke the silence. Well, IQ, at least we know one thing. What's that? IQ snapped. It works. The eighth commandment. You shall not steal. Gloria Tattletooth talks up a storm. I do so love birthday parties, said Gloria Tattletooth to Natalie Creampuff. Together they were creating a triple luscious lemon layer cake in Natalie's kitchen. Yes, especially a party for such a terrific fellow as Ready Freddy Finstrom, sighed Natalie. I want to make him the very best cake ever.
Remember how Freddie helped me sell Goody Girl Club cookies last spring? What a guy. Sure, but didn't he eat twice as many as you sold? Gloria interrupted, sifting some flour into a mixing bowl. Well, that's a minor detail, Natalie said, for someone as generous as Freddie. Yeah, Gloria Tattletooth rolled her eyes. He's sure overwhelmed Jenny Jingles with his generosity lately. Don't be ridiculous, Natalie snapped, cracking an egg on the side of the bowl. I don't ever want to hear about Jenny and Freddie. Fine with me, Gloria agreed. Besides, Freddie's too smart to really fall for a big mouth like her. How do you know Freddie does so much with Jenny? Natalie cracked another egg, this time dropping the shell on the bowl. Why, he volunteered to help old man Henkel with his yard work, and that takes up most of his spare time. Volunteered my foot, said Gloria. He's probably draining the old geezer's checkbook. How much money do you think he spends on Jenny? Natalie asked, tossing several more eggs and a dozen whole lemons into the batter. Well, with all the money he wastes on junk food and comics, Gloria began, he probably doesn't have much left for Jenny, but... Boy, what a creep, fumed Natalie, shoving a whole lumpy cake into the oven. It baked in no time. Gloria added oodles of frosting while Natalie sat staring into space thinking angry thoughts. Just then the doorbell rang. It's that lousy, no-good, self-serving two-timer Freddie, sputtered Natalie, carrying the cake to the front door. Freddie poked his head through the door. For me? He grinned. Happy rotten birthday, shouted Natalie, dumping the cake onto Freddie's head. My favorite upside-down cake, said Freddie, peering through dripping layers of eggshells, lemons, and buttercream frosting. What did I do to deserve this? Don't get me started, said Natalie, slamming the door in his face. What did I do? Freddie repeated. Gloria shrugged. I don't know what came over her. She has such a temper. The 9th commandment. You shall not give false testimony against your neighbor. Hi again, Droodles fans. This is one of my favorite chapters coming up. There's only one chapter better than this, and that's in the Proverbs version with Fudge Lug Sweet Shop. But anyway, you're going to enjoy this next 10th commandment. A million toys too many. By the time that Christmas vacation ends, most of the young folks in Trudaville feel really grumpy. The holiday cheer has been tossed out along with torn wrappings of disappointing gifts. You know that Gabby Girdle doll they show all the time on TV, scowled Lucy Springby just before class? Well, the one I got only says 12 things. Big deal. I gave my babysitter this really great remote control race car, explained Ready Freddie Finstrom. And you know, it really wasn't all that great. Hey, there's that new kid who moved in at Christmas, said Sugarlips Murphy, pointing his peppermint stick toward the only quiet person in the classroom. Let's ask what he got. Allow me, said Freddie, leaning over toward the visitor. Hey, new kid, yelled Freddie. You got toys? Yes, the boy answered politely, and I also have a name, Gilman Chatsworth. Everybody listened up. Gilman here's got toys, Freddie proclaimed. What kind of toys do you have, Gilman? Again, Gilman replied courteously. Actually, I have a room with a million toys. Ah, I bet you do, Freddie scoffed. Did your father rob a bank? No, smiled Gilman. He owns one. In fact, he owns several. If you like, you may all come over to my house after school to play. The class was stunned. Invitations like that happen once in a lifetime at most. Before they knew it, school ended and they stood inside the Chatsworth mansion facing the massive doors to Gilman's playroom. Welcome, friends, smiled Gilman, pushing a green button marked open. All that is mine is yours to enjoy. And enjoy they did. From then on, every day after school, the whole gang headed for Gilman's place. Their own toys, even their favorites, soon lay at home forgotten. Each day they played until their mothers called them home, and each night they drifted off to sleep, wishing for more and better toys at Gilman's. Say, Sugarlips, called Ready Freddie one day, whizzing around Gilman's room on the roller go-kart. Have you ever noticed that Gilman never comes in here with us? Come on, Sugarlips howled, rounding the next curve. This place is so big, how can you be sure? I'm sure, Freddie insisted. Gilman always leaves us off at the door. I think he has another playroom somewhere just for himself, It's probably twice as big as this one. A super room? The very thought overwhelmed Sugarlips. From then on, Freddie and Sugarlips had a tough time enjoying Gilman's playroom. No matter what toy they played with, the thought that there was an even more spectacular collection elsewhere left their mouths watering. One afternoon, as the rest of the gang entered the playroom, Freddie and Sugarlips stayed by the door. "Look, Gilman, old chum," said Freddie, putting his arm around Gilman's shoulder. "We know you've got something else going on around here somewhere. You never play in here yourself." "Yeah," Sugarlips agreed. "You haven't shown the slightest interest in anything in that big room. We think you're holding back on us." The two edged closer to Gilman. "Show us your secret room," they demanded. Nervously, Gilman led them through a long passageway lined with portraits of old men, and then down a long stairwell crowded with portraits of old ladies. Finally he stopped at an old iron door, pulled a large brass key from his pocket, and turned it in the rusty lock. The door creaked, and blinding sunlight shone into the dark stairwell. "I don't believe my eyes," Freddie gasped. "It can't be true," gulped for Sugarlips, choking on a fudge drop. In front of them lay a tiny grass-covered courtyard with an ordinary oak tree in the center. A tire swing dangled from one branch, and a rickety ladder led to a treehouse. "You mean this is where you play?" Freddie exclaimed. "This little weed patch?" "Yes. Here I can be anyone. A pirate, a soldier, a knight in King Arthur's court," Gilman explained. "I can explore jungles, sail the oceans, or go to the moon. I've discovered that my imagination is better than anything money can buy, and it doesn't cost a dime." Gilman ran over to his tree, and with one foot on the bottom of the ladder, called back, "Want to play?" Sugarlips and Freddie looked at each other, then giggled. "Sure, Gilman, why not?" The 10th commandment: "You shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, or manservant, or maidservant, his ox or donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor." On this page are some notes for parents and teachers. If you want to read this, go ahead and pause the recording now. On page 63, it continues with the notes and tips for parents and teachers. If you want to read it, stop the tape now. This is the end of Droodles' 10 Commandments, a fun book I've always enjoyed. It's out of print, and that's why I've taken the time to record this. It has some of my favorite chapters, and there's also another book with Fudge Lug's Sweet Shop, and that's in the Proverbs book, and some future time I may record that too. Goodbye for now. God bless you. And let Mr. Hand know if you enjoyed this video.